In this video, we'll continue our study of intervals, adding two more sets, the fourths and the fifths. In the previous videos, we learned how to identify major and minor seconds, as well as major and minor thirds. So now the next numbers, of course, are fourths and fifths. A fourth is formed by going up or down, counting 4 consecutive letter names. So if we're going from A up to D, it spans A, B, C, and D. Those are 4. Or for example, going from B to E, it spans B, C, D, E. That's what we mean by counting 4 consecutive letter names. As you might guess, a fifth goes up or down 5 consecutive letter names. C to G, or F to C, each going up, or D to G going down, for example. Let's go back to the clock diagram so you can get another visual perspective. One thing we'll notice is that the fourth spans 5 half steps, while the fifth spans 7 half steps. So here on the clock, if we're going to be moving a fourth, let's say from C to F, then we're counting from C 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. On the other hand, if we go from C down to F, that means that we're going this way. We're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 half steps. Let's look at another example. We'll erase that. And let's look at the example where we're moving from E up to B. So from E up to B, that should be a fifth, E, F, G, A, B. And from E, we're moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 half steps. Or from E down to B, where we're moving in that direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. So I just showed you that with any fourth or fifth, you move 5 half steps in one direction or 7 half steps in the other direction, and you get to the same place. That makes sense because 5 plus 7 is 12, and we have 12 spots around the clock, or 12 half steps in an octave musically. So that handles the number. But what about the quality? Fourths and fifths are different than seconds and thirds. We would call each of these a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth. There's no such thing as a minor fourth or a minor fifth. So why perfect? There are several ways to explain this, but the simplest way to explain it is that whether you move a perfect fourth up or a perfect fifth down from any given note, you'll arrive at the same pitch either way. I just showed you that on the clock. So just count 5 half steps in either direction for a perfect fourth, 7 half steps in either direction for a perfect fifth. I'll show you some examples on the clock, on the staff, and on the keyboard. So some examples might be from C to G, which is a perfect fifth up, or a perfect fourth down, A to D, a fourth up or a fifth down, B flat to F, a fifth up or a fourth down, or E to B natural, a perfect fifth up or a perfect fourth down. Let's look at some of these. So from C to G, you can count in this direction and that's 7 half steps, or in that direction, and that's 5 half steps. So a perfect fifth up or a perfect fourth down. The next example that I gave you was from A up to D. So here's A, here's D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 going down. The next example I gave you after that was B flat to F. So here's B flat and here's F. So going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get the idea on the clock. Let's look at on the keyboard and on the staff. So on the staff, here's C to G, here's A to D, and here's B flat to F, and we'll look at each of these. So from C to G, that's a perfect fifth going up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 half steps. Or if I were to go down to G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's erase all of those marks. And now if I'm going from A over here up to D, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's a perfect fourth going up. Or A down to D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's a perfect fifth going down. And finally, the last example that I gave you there was from a B flat to an F. So here's the B flat on the black key, and here is the F. And if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we're going down to the F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you get the idea. You may be feeling like counting half steps can be getting tedious, especially as the intervals get larger. So it's time for us to learn a shortcut. You may have noticed that the pairs of notes a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth apart, the accidental is the same for both notes. In other words, C natural to G natural is a perfect fifth, which also means that C sharp to G sharp is a perfect fifth. Would that be true for all of them? Almost. We just looked at a B flat and an F, and I can tell you also that a B natural to an F sharp, those are perfect fifths also, but that's the exception. So we can generalize for all but the B and F pairs that are a fourth or a fifth apart, it's perfect if the two notes have the same accidental. So that means that A flat to D flat is a perfect fourth, the same way that A natural to D natural is. We talked in the last video about moving a certain interval the same both notes. The interval doesn't change. That's what we're doing here. Okay, so what about that exception? What about the B and F pair? It's perfect when the F is one accidental higher than the B. What I mean by that is we just looked at B flat up to F or F to B flat, so the natural is one accidental higher than the flat. Or if I went F sharp to B, the sharp is one accidental higher than the natural. And that's just for the exception, the B and F pair. So you can tell these without even having to count half steps. Think about the C major scale. All white keys, natural notes. That means that almost all of the fourths or fifths found in the scale are perfect. Okay, but what about B to F or F to B? You can't alter either one and still have a C major scale. In other words, if you try to make this a perfect fifth by making it a B flat, then it's not C major anymore. Or if you try to make this a perfect fourth by altering the F to F sharp, that's not a C major scale anymore. So in fact, if you count half steps in either direction from B to F, you get 6 half steps, not 5 or 7. So what do we call this if it's not perfect? So to illustrate, here's the C major scale. And what we're going to focus on are those two notes and that interval. Or if I went down one note further, that interval. So here's the F, and here's this B, and here's that B. So if I count half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And half steps the other way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's in between 5 and 7, and going this way is a fourth, and going this way is a fifth. So 6 half steps is 1 half step wider than a perfect fourth, and it's 1 half step narrower than a perfect fifth, right? So it's not perfect anymore. Since a fourth is wider than a perfect fifth, since the fourth is wider than a perfect fourth, we call it an augmented fourth. Augmented are things that are bigger, made larger. In the other span, the fifth is narrower than a perfect fifth, so we call it a diminished fifth. We'll learn more about augmented and diminished intervals when you get to class, but this is the one case where in order to see what's happening in a major scale, you need to understand this. We actually have a nickname that covers both of these. So consider F to the B to the higher F. We just divided the octave evenly using 3 notes. Evenly meaning that this would be 6 half steps and this would be 6 half steps as well. So we call this interval because it divides the octave into 3 notes. We call this a tritone. And a tritone can be either an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. So time for a big review. A fourth or a fifth spans 4 or 5 consecutive letter names. A perfect fourth spans 5 half steps, while a perfect fifth spans 7 half steps. And except for the B and F pair of notes, any pair of notes a fourth or a fifth apart are perfect if both notes have the same accidental. For the B and F pairing, the B flat to F or the B natural to F sharp are perfect, and notice that the F is 1 accidental higher than the accidental on the B. If B and F have the same accidental, however, we call it a tritone, and it spans 6 half steps no matter which direction we go in, whether it's a fourth or a fifth. If the interval's a fourth, F up to B, we call it an augmented fourth, being wider than a perfect fourth. If it's a fifth, B up to F, we call it a diminished fifth, being narrower than a perfect fifth. But as I said, augmented and diminished intervals are more complicated, and those are things that we'll do more in class. It's more important now that you be able to identify perfect fourths and perfect fifths wherever they are on the keyboard or on the staff. That's all for this video. Now go practice.